Hello, welcome to Leaders and Legends. And today I have with me a true legend of the streets, David Guerrero. We had one podcast before, and it looks like we're going to step this up into a whole series of different pods covering plethora of topics. But today I think it's about fear and confronting fear. We both have some parallels in our universe when it comes to fear, specifically with violence and things of, we'll say, high intensity neighborhoods, different places, but similar outcomes. David, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, sir. I don't know how I beat that intro, man. Thanks for having me. Um, yeah, like KB said, we today I thought it was a good topic to talk about fear. Um, Kind of the opening for this, and what I kind of thought about when I was putting this idea together was, you know, the podcast called Leaders and Legends. So obviously we want to talk to leaders and legends. I'm a leader working on being a legend. But when we talk about leadership and like kind of personal growth, most of the time we focus on accolades and skills and accomplishments and such, and goals. Of course, goals are a huge part of it. But I wanted to evolve beyond those things and maybe like talk about what might actually stop those things or actually become a huge obstacles to those things that are in theory setups to get you into what you want to do. You know, you did the work, now you should get the reward type of thing. But I think fear is one of the biggest reasons why people stay static, stuck in place, and then kind of just hold us back from seeing the bigger picture, maybe because of a lack of belief in ourselves or a fear of failure. Sometimes we fear success, man. Sometimes it happens that way. So I thought I'd kind of go back a long time to the 90s when we had talked before, and I was a graffiti writer for a few years, and then that evolved, and it's a really common story in the time period, and then of course the area, Los Angeles County. I um so I was writing graph, and one of the things that, like I said, is kind of a natural progression, natural evolution, is a lot of times there's a lot of transferable skills between graffiti and gang membership, gang banging.
Wait a
And
minute.
the big
So just for clarity, because
yeah
I was confused a little bit
yeah
last time we talked, because we all have our preconceptions of what street life is like, you know. So you're saying that graffiti artistry and then going and moving into gang banging, like what you say, like it's like a gateway drug to gang banging. I mean, what like what is the relationship between those two?
Great question. Yep. So yeah, I would say in my time period, everybody that not everybody, let's just say like 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 kids started in tagging and graffiti. And then that's kind of this recruiting pool for gang membership, which in that culture, in street culture, it is seen as an upgrade, a level up. You know what I mean? Because once you join a clique, you join a neighborhood, the way you're seen, treated, all that stuff is completely different. You walk around with quite a bit more weight behind you, and people kind of know those things about you, and that's kind of what drew me to it. So, what I was a couple years, did graffiti for a couple years, and then I had been loosely been getting recruited by the neighborhood I lived in for a while there, and I kind of let that ride. And um, I kind of happenstance got it up. There was a huge uptick in the recruit when I got involved in a conflict that it wasn't actually mine, but I was helping somebody that was getting rat packed. So I went to school, Jefferson Middle School in East Long Beach, and I was there was always violence. Like it didn't matter, but most of the time in those settings, kids that lived on that side of town, they went to that school. So it was rare when you would encounter like a rival clique at school. Rare. It was pretty rare. Like because and if you did, it was like really a surprise. Well, feels like that rarity came across my desk for lack of a better term at school. So there was an arrival to the neighbor, and I wasn't clicked up yet. I wasn't part of this set yet, but I went to that school, and I had a lot of friends that started in graph and eventually ended up gangbanging and ended up being members of this clique. And that's where a lot of the recruitment and stuff came from, is with cats that I had already knew and ran with, and they knew that I was a rowdy kid. They knew that I was down. And in some situations, with graph and graffiti and tagging, you'll take bigger risks than some street gangsters. You know what I mean? Like, you'll take a risk. You'll go up on top of something that you're not sure how you're gonna get down, but just the getting up was for the thrill of it. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna get down off this, but I'm gonna go. That's a good spot, and I know that it'll run forever. And run for the uninitiated, run means it'll be up for a while. That's always the point. You want to put something up there that'll run for a while.
So we're talking about like the billboard branding, right?
Heaven spots. Yep.
Heaven spots. How many eyes can see what's happening? Because that's important. Because that's making your mark.
Who you are,
right?
For sure. Yep. And so a lot of my my homies and stuff that I wrote graph with had kind of all leveled up and joined this clique, and I'd been kind of getting recruited loosely and casually for a while, and then I had come across a rival to the neighborhood I wasn't from yet, a rival to that set, going to that school. And I had just kind of run across him one day, and I noticed that he was apprehensive to kind of talk to me. I just was like, "Hey man, what's up? How you doing?" And then I noticed he didn't speak English very well. That was one thing that stood out to me, and that's actually a characteristic. I don't want to say any hood names, but that was a characteristic of this hood. Believe it or not, is that most of these dudes didn't speak English very good and stuff. So, and I was like, "Oh, like, who are you, man?" And then he kind of told me, and so we'll get into this a little bit, but there's a thing back in these days that, like, if you were from a neighborhood and somebody was to confront you and ask you, the common terminology is, where you from? And the obligation that you have as a member, as a representative of that set, and it's called ranking out. If you were to say that you didn't gangbang, like, "Oh man, I'm not from anywhere. I don't want any trouble." If you are a member of that set, you're going to own that up right there. You're going to say who you are and where you're from.
Oh
And
wow!
irregardless,
That's really part of like that's how people know, is because you're proud to be part of that,
100%.
right?
Very
You're
good.
defending that zone, so you're the one that's going to say something, and those who are not are just like, yo, that's not my thing. I'm not from anywhere. I'm from my house right there. I'm not from anywhere.
Yep. 100%. And so that knowledge of that ownership and that like that stewardship of the neighborhood, if I say, "Where you from?" you have to tell me. And so, anyways, I asked him kind of casually, not confronting him. I was neutral to this situation. I was like, "Man, you go here, where you from?" And he told me, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's wild, man." Um, and I was conflicted in that moment. I was like, I don't want to like tell anybody that he's here, but because my homies that like I said, of the set, at that moment, I wasn't from the set, but my homies were, and I was like, I'd be doing them wrong if I didn't let them know that there was one of their, like, a sizable rival there. In Long Beach, there's a lot of beef, man, and you can hierarchy out that beef. Is like, we don't care, they're nobody. Ooh, this set has a couple, like, I mean, there's a lot of murder and a lot of bad stuff for, really, honestly, when you look back, it's no reason, KB. You know what I mean? But there's reasons. You have a reason, but unfortunately, it's based off reasoning of an institutionalized and closed mind. And so
Right.
you say, "Wow, this is really important to me, and you disrespected my hood, so now you die," or "Now I'm gonna change your life for the worst for the rest of
How
it," because
how old were you at this
at
time?
this I was just I was early. I was 13 and a half. As in,
Wow.
yep. And so anyway, so I tell my friends, "Hey man, there's this dude here. This is where he's from." They're like, "No way." Yep. I'm like, "All right, cool." And so he didn't come to school for a few days. I think he kind of knew, because he knew that I lived on the, he knew I lived on the east side. He knew all that stuff. He's like, this guy's going to tell him because there was a bunch of members, a bunch of dudes from that set in our school. And so, I tell him, and I tell them, and then he doesn't show up for a couple of days, and then he finally does show up. And that day, it was kind of just normal. That I saw him. I didn't say anything else. I said I did my part. I kind of let everybody know that, we had kind of a breach here, whatever, for lack of a better term. And then I after school, I think at the time there was four of my homies there, and there was only one that was left there by himself that day. And we used to walk to the bus stop together, and we were walking, and two carloads of dudes rat packed us, jumped us beat us up pretty good, man, touched us up good. And I stood up for myself, defended myself, and tried to protect my friend and stuff. We were outnumbered like 12-2 or something. It was crazy, a lot of people. And so, but then that kind of built this like urban legend, where it was like, hey man, homeboy, who don't run, he's not from the set. He's a tagger, but he like backed up Victor in this, in this Rat Pack situation. That's down, we should put him on, and we should talk to him and put him on. And so I had kind of feelings that I wanted to do it. Because I mentioned earlier when we had talked about the level up and the upgrade and stuff. I always loved how the dudes that were clicked up as that were from neighborhoods, I always loved how they got treated. Like nobody, like, I'll put it to you like this. I've told my wife this story a million times, and she's always kind of surprised by not anymore. She gets it now, but like, we lived in a time where like we didn't have cameras on every corner or every stoplight and that, and the people that the civilians and the people that lived in our neighborhoods, man, they didn't really call the cops, dude. They just kind of were like, I don't want that kind of trouble. So obviously, man, it was all based on fear and kind of just, bully mentality, right? I'm not going to start anything with this guy because he's, this. Like I said it in our last pod when we were talking about we touched on gangbang and stuff a little bit. Civilians are, if this was a game, civilians would always be negative point value. There's no, like, we don't bully, we don't touch civilians. They know their place. And that's kind of how that was thought. That was the thought on that. Well, I had been kicking it around, so it wasn't that hard to persuade me. And so shortly after that, I had talked to some cats that I knew that were above and beyond my homies that I wrote with, because they were new, if you want to consider, we were all early kind of foot soldiers, man, just kids, junior, middle school, freshman age kids, man, just foot soldiers, just little menaces, little traviesos, man, little nothing. And so I had talked to some older cats that I knew about it, and I was like, yo man, should I join up? And one person in particular who I'm actually still really friends with, and I really love him a whole bunch, and he's a huge taught me, in my opinion, how to be down and all that stuff, man. And we're still really close, and I love him a ton. He was one of the first ones I talked to, and I was like, listen, man, they're recruiting me, they're trying to put me on. And he's like, I wouldn't do it, man. I just wouldn't. He'd been active for a few years at that point, and he's about 5 years older than me. And so, great perspective, and he was like, no, and I was like, all right. And then he kind of slapped me around a little bit. It was like, promise me that you won't join, you won't click up. And I was like, okay. I was just lying. So I agreed to it. And I remember specifically the day we had planned to meet up. And so this is kind of inside stuff here, man. So
Well,
go ahead.
Let you catch your breath for a second.
Yeah.
Because I just want to slow down the clock a touch, because some of the things you said, like, so you're 13,
yeah,
and two people who have at least driver's license, plus a whole bunch of other yahoos, various ages, jumped out to beat up two 13-year-olds. So that's something. Like that is something I'm also from the 90s.
Yeah.
And and I do remember, right? Like there
Yeah.
were times in which we fought for different reasons. Now in my
Mhm.
neighborhood, it's too small to be any clicking up. That's for dang
Yeah.
sure.
That's awesome.
It's a
That's
mile
awesome.
long, man. Like you're not getting anywhere. And so, but I think it's human nature to kind of drive down a little bit, right? You got yours, you got
Yeah.
theirs,
Oh, 100%.
right?
100%.
It's just kind of human nature in that. And also, like you said it before I even said anything, because as it's the recruitment process going from, because that's got to be some general fear of violence at any given moment, and then the
Yeah.
feeling to one of the, in your words, like click up, is
Mhm.
also part of that like protection piece of
Very
like
good.
the kind of like to put up a barrier
Yeah.
around that fear because of that violence. And you said before I said it, because I wrote down, child soldier,
Yeah.
on there, and it's just really brings to light, because I don't think a lot of people understand the world in the sense of why are there these child soldiers everywhere? Because that's a thing. Like that's just a thing
Yeah.
on the
Good point.
planet Earth everywhere. It's not just in Africa. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And people go, well, why would somebody do that? Exactly why, right?
Mhm.
They would do it not because I mean, they might fear the person recruiting them, but they
Yeah.
fear those who are not part of the clique even more.
Right. Yeah. Great point. Great point. And so, yeah, man. So, and I want to make sure I kind of touch this before I get going again. I've had to do a ton of my own soul searching and um, kind of psychological overhaul to be able to talk about these things in a way that I don't glorify this and I'm not proud of any of it. It's just a part of who I am and my history and stuff. But I did try to take something from it, and I think I did. And so I remember once I'd kind of like, yup, all right, I'll do it. I had agreed, to get put on the set. Now put on is a beating into the set, into the neighborhood. You don't get in without taking a beating. And I fought 7 of my future homies to be accepted into this hood. And I remember the day it happened. I was at school and I had planned on showing up to do it later. Now, I don't know if anybody here had their ass whooped, but if you ever scheduled an ass whooping, it it sucks. Like the whole day, you're like, man, I just stuff like that.
That's hilarious.
Right. So
Scheduling an
I
ass whooping.
scheduled an ass whooping, man.
Yeah.
And the day passes and everybody's stoked and pumping you up and like, man, you're gonna be the illest, it's gonna be amazing, you're gonna kill this, you're gonna be so good, you're so down, you're so rowdy. Everybody's gassing you up, man, so you can show up to the spot, take your beating, and now you're full blown, full time, whole ass gangster at 13 years old. I've had 2 times in my life, KB, that I went through some type of ceremony and I felt immediately different. One was getting married. Believe it or not, I married my wife for that. We've been together 6 years. I married her, and that same day, I felt immediately responsible for her, and I knew that I wanted to like die for her. Like it was insane. And I'd been with her for a minute and getting put on set. I felt immediately unstoppable, bulletproof. Like you can't tell me shit. Like I'm that guy. And so, uh, you know, in most settings, work and everything else in life, right? School, there's like this onboarding and kind of this soft opening to your life. And this is gonna be what you're gonna be doing from now on. We're gonna set you up in a test environment and it's gonna be easy. You're gonna have the first 3 months, you're not gonna do anything. That's a complete opposite in an active game. So one of the first things that happened to me, and happened to me, it was also scheduled, was somebody that I didn't know was going to put me through a battery of tests. And they're not. It's not super scientific or anything like that. So I don't want to make anybody think that. But I didn't know this cat, and he finds me by myself, and he like jams me up, hits me up, but tells me he's from at that point our our number one arch enemy. He tells me that's where he's from, and he finds me and he's like, "Hey, homie, where you from?" And you know, I owned up. I had no tattoo, I had nothing that indicated I was from anywhere at that time, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't know this was a test, but I owned up to it right away. He let me go. He was like, "Good job, youngster." Like, and I was like, "Oh," and then he introduced himself and we became friends. Believe it or not, uh, I helped him at a time that he got shot 6 times in his legs and didn't want to go to the hospital. So he made a bunch of us in an apartment, like attend to his wounds and put penicillin on his. And he's like, I ain't going to the hospital, man. So we became,
Oh my
yeah, yeah,
goodness.
yeah. We became pretty close, man. We became pretty close. Um, and then I went through a couple more of those things where, people are always just hitting you up and trying to find out, if you're down, if you got it, are you here? Are you from this hood? And so that started going, that had kind of got tired. I had kind of survived all that. But then I started getting into real like life, in production, like ass whoopings from like other sets because I would find myself in compromising situations. I rode the bus for a lot of when I was a kid, and I didn't have a car. My mom was on the outs,
Oh, I know
and,
that life. I know all about the bus pass life.
I love the bus. I love the bus. And I Long Beach Transit, the RTD. I rode the Metro. Dude. I'm a public transfer gangster. Like I love that stuff.
And this
I
is
would never
before
do it now.
there were apps for that, right? So this is
Right,
when
right.
you had to
I
know
waited. I
when and
waited. Yeah.
where how to get hooked up.
Yeah, every 15 minutes, it's, in most cases is how that always worked, man. It'd stop every 15 minutes, a couple of buses on the same line. So I would ride the bus everywhere, man. That put me in a lot of different neighborhoods, a lot of different spots that I probably shouldn't have been in and stuff. But for the most part, if I was out of town or something, like outside of Long Beach or, even outside of North Long Beach, I was in like Bellflower, Paramount, something like that. Like for the most part, I could, and it was during the day, I could move around pretty good. At night, you had to be careful, but during the day, I could move around pretty good. And so there's an uptick in duties, I guess, for lack of a better term, when you're gangbanging. You have this like you own being on the spot. Like, hey, I didn't see you down on so and so street for the last few days. Where you been? Like, oh, sorry, man. Yeah, I was, busy. And when you're clicked up and you're gangbanging, you don't have anything else better to do, man. It doesn't work that way. Like, oh yeah, I was doing some self personal development shit. Like it don't work that way. So you have to answer to that stuff sometimes. You're not down
Hmm.
in the set where you've been looking for you. No, no, I'm good. I'm back. And then little duty, little tasks, little foot patrol. Like I said, man, just kind of patrolling the neighborhood, making sure that, that nothing funky's going on. You're always looking out for rivals and enemies and stuff. And then you start getting start getting these little bugs to like go and start shit. So we would do that. We would pile in a car and go start shit, man, and
Because now it's
other
about
hoods.
challenging, right?
Now
Because
it's
it's not just enough to protect the neighborhood; it's also to challenge
yep,
next door and such,
yep,
right? Otherwise, what's the
yeah.
point of being in the clique?
Yeah, you got to win the title. You can't just defend it, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And so we would go out and start shit, and I'd go to other neighborhoods. And obviously, man, I got a graph background and can control and stuff. So it was always like, yo, man, you should go get up over there. And so I would do that, man. I would go to the neighborhood, get up, and then I started getting known for, people knew me, like they were like, hey, that's that dude, man. That's that kid that used to be from this tagging crew. It was just really and I stood out, because I'm lighter skinned and you know, just look different, man. You know what I'm saying? So like so these cats kind of all knew who I was. And then with that, comes retaliation and a lot of violence that comes our way and stuff too. And so this was a couple months in, And one day, I had just made, I kind of hit it off with one of my homies that was a little couple years older than me. He's 15, and we had hit it off pretty good, man. And I was like, "Oh man, well let's click up, let's." And then there's like we're drinking underage and drugs and all that shit. So like him and I hit it off really good. It was really dope to be around him, and I thought he'd had a little bit more time than me, and so you learn from these cats and stuff. And then um about maybe a week or so after I met him and really was impressed by him and really wanted to spend more time with him, I got told that he was shot.
Mm.
And he was 15, like I said, young. And so I thought, well, then, yeah, man, let's go see him. Let's go to the hospital. So we go to the hospital, and me and two other homies. And I'll never forget it, man. Like, uh, there was this. He's paraplegic after everything, but there was this bar that was hanging over his bed, and I remember walking in, and the first thing I saw was him holding this bar while nurses are like tending to his bowel movements and stuff, man. And I was like, I didn't know what to feel, man. I was so neutral in my feelings, and I don't really know why I was, but I was. I was like, man, like, because I think at that point I was pretty good and like kind of brainwashed. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
this
And
is
like overwhelmed too, right? Like you go
yeah,
into that
great.
situation, you
Yep.
just get numb.
Yep.
Like
And
there
so
is no
yeah,
response.
and to me, people will tell you that know me, my wife will tell you, my saying has always been, and this is a huge saying in the set: you play, you pay. So we know the consequence of KB. We know. And so I remember feeling really neutral, but like that night I went home and I was like, yo, man, like this is crazy. Like he's like, and his mom was there and she was all polite to us and stuff. And she could have like blamed us and stuff. You know what I'm saying? But she was like, oh no, he's gonna need a wheelchair and all that stuff. And then so he goes to rehab and eventually gets like released, and you know, he's back on the hood, back on the set, man. Like in a
Back on the
wheelchair,
set in
back
a
in the set,
wheelchair.
man, in a wheelchair, man. Like doing his thing, like he still had so much pride, man. And that's the part that like I don't know that I've ever really up until probably I started thinking about doing this podcast. I never really thought that how much pride had to do with it, man. Like neighborhood pride, like this is who I am, man. And like and so I remember him like almost in a way acting like nothing happened. You know what I'm saying? Like he was like a legend. He was like a legend after that, man. It was crazy. And so, um, I didn't let that stop me, man. I still kept
Because it's
gang banging.
almost
Still,
it's almost like getting like a purple heart at that point.
yeah, for sure. Well,
Right? Like
because
you
at that
got
point you're on.
wounded
Yep,
in service of,
yep. You're,
right?
and at that point you're untouchable. Like you can't really put in work like me. You can't like nobody expects you to be physical, and nobody expects you. And when I say nobody expects you, it's one of those unspoken things. Like nobody's out there saying, "Go get the homie, go get the paraplegic to back us up." Like nobody's talking like that. But you still want him around. You still treat him with respect. You still love him. And so he had this kind of carte blanche to like be around us, and it didn't matter. Like we loved him the same. We didn't care. We didn't treat him like less, nothing. But like we also didn't expect the same things from him and stuff. And so um that happened, and then kind of just business as usual, man. More gang banging, more violence, more beef. And then I had so that we used to do this thing. We used to throw these like ditching parties. So like a lot of us weren't in school, but we would go and recruit like girls and stuff and say like, hey man, we're gonna throw this party and at this place. And we had an older friend who ended up marrying one of my homies down the road, and he actually ended up they moved to Mexico together to get away from like violence and stuff, man. And this is way down the road. This is way after the fact, but like he got killed in Mexico, man. Like and just trying to get
Oh
away from it.
wow.
Yeah. So he was older than us, and from another city in like it's in San Bernardino County or something. But she had moved to Long Beach, and she was white and loved Mexican dudes and loved gangsters. She loved gangsters. She didn't gangbang, she wasn't active, but she loved gangsters. And so she let us kick it at her house all the time. And so that we would, throw parties. And then in that same point, my homie they ended up being like her main dude or boyfriend. He lived with her and stuff. So that we would throw parties at her place all the time. We'd go recruit girls and stuff, from different schools, high schools and stuff. They'd come over and music and all that stuff, man, just party and all
Because
bad
now you're a
shit.
little older, right? Now we're talking about
Yep.
junior high
Like,
school.
Yep,
time
yep,
frame.
high school, high school age,
High
yep, high
school.
school age, yep. And so, and I wasn't in school at the time, because I had skipped probation, and was kind of on the run. Like, so part of the conditions of probation is to be in school, but they don't put you in a regular school. Like I tried to get into school once, and they were like, nope, you're a danger to the student body, and it's cool. I would have done the same thing. I do it now. Like, nah, you can't go to the school, man. So, I was in school, so we were always, partying and all that stuff. And so we had met these girls from North Long Beach, and they had like a place that we could party in North Long Beach. And North Long Beach, it's like I say North Long Beach, you're like, what's the difference? So North Long Beach is another city. It's like it is completely different, and there's also rival sets in North Long Beach to where I'm from. And so we would go up there to like party there. It was like, oh sweet, like nobody knows us up here. We can kind of lay low and da 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 da. And one of the girls who she wasn't a girlfriend or anything to mine. She like set me up, and got me surrounded at a 7-Eleven, man, and got my ass whipped pretty good there, man. And so, that was kind of a weird deal, man. And so then, we stopped kind of throwing parties, with people outside of the set, like, I don't do that no more, so we stopped doing that. And then, so then I started kind of really taking a ton of risks and going into any enemy neighborhoods looking for trouble and stuff, man. I would do that a lot. And then,
Let me ask you for a sec.
yeah,
How do you think that? Okay, so two versions of that answer, right?
sure.
The answer of the time, at the time, why did you think that was a good idea? And in retrospect, why do you think you did it?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you. I did it because I felt like I had a lot to prove, because I was new. I wasn't new at this point, but like, you are only as down and as known as the dirt you commit, man. Like, that's it, And so if you're known for being like rowdy and like just a reckless dude, that's stock in a clique, man. That's a huge boost to who you are if you're down for most activity. It's so, and I'm gonna not skip, but I'm gonna give a little bit of context here. So in the early '90s, there was what was considered like a ceasefire, like a peace treaty. Now, a lot of people might think it's the Rodney King thing. That's different, and that was just for TV. That was bullshit. That didn't last but a couple days, if anything. And that was between Bloods and Crip sets. That didn't trickle over to the Latino gangs and stuff. It didn't have anything to do with us. And so, but so in the early '90s, there was an actual ceasefire, like a peace treaty that was like kind of commanded of us, like it was demanded, like, you guys need to stop killing each other. And I'll give some more context on that. The reason why, well, what we perceived as the reason at the time was that there was so most gangs so most of your cities, your urban settings and stuff like that, are melting pots of cultures and ethnicities and stuff like that, nationalities. Well, there was a big, huge beef between like Asian gangs and Hispanic gangs in Long Beach at the time. And so the biggest thing is the way that we were kind of told. It was like, we want you guys to stop killing each other, because you're doubling down on it by killing each other, and then the Asian gangs and stuff. They're taking you guys out too. So you're doubling down on it. You're killing yourself. So, and that's stupid. And so that was kind of what we were sold on at the time. And
And where did that come from? Did that come from within the hierarchy or external?
nah, that's external, man. That came from way up top. Like from the prison system and stuff like that. That's where that came from.
So it is in the hierarchy, just
Outside,
this
like
way
outside of
outside
my
the small little domain, but up
yep,
higher up the food chain.
outside of my my
Mm-hmm.
point of view, my scope for sure, man. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I wanted to drop that in real quick because that kind of feeds to this next part of the story. So I was really known for going into enemy hoods and just being a wild man and really representing the set fully. You know what I'm saying? Like I got like I'm not taking my shirt off for you, KB, but I got a bunch of gang tattoos on my chest, my back, my arm. So my mom, so much that my mom used to call me Bill, short for billboard, because she's like, "You're gonna die before you 25, billboard." Like my mom used to call me that, man. So fun fact there.
So truly
And so
represent. So your tagging goes from external to on top.
there you go. Yeah, right. I'm serious about it. So so I mentioned the peace treaty because I my oldest daughter, her family lived, and my oldest daughter's 30. And this was, like I said, she was born in 94. So um she lived, her family lived on the other side of town, like what I would say is our legacy rival, like generations, 20 years before I even existed, type of thing. And I used to go there a lot, and I would do that before the peace treaty. And that was one of those things that when my homies found out that I did that, I had some explaining to do. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're gonna, you're just fuck your life, right? You just want to die, And so, I didn't care. I was so something about like the workflow of overcoming fear, KB, is that it's so momentous. Like
Mm.
you do one thing, it wasn't so bad. All right. Well, I'm gonna up the stakes a little bit. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. And then like I used to take regular beatings. I used to get rat packed and jumped all the time. Like it got to the point where I was comfortable if it was only two people. I was like, it's only two of them. Who cares? Like it got like there was that cadence, that frequency of like violence, man, where I was just down to take an ass whooping all the time because I was like, maybe I'll get a few shots in myself, I'll do some damage myself. And so, and then, there was weapons involved. I've had bottles busted up. I had so much scar tissue in my eyes from all this fighting and all this like turning into a pumpkin head every other week. I had so much scar tissue in my eyes that if, let's just say, this little our AirPod case is sitting right here in front of me where my phone is, if I went to reach for salt or pepper or something, I couldn't tell which was which. I was going blind, man. I had so much scar tissue in my eyes. I had a corneal transplant in 2009. Young kid from Iowa that died in a car wreck, was an organ donor, donated me his corneas, man. So I had a
No
corneal
kidding.
transplant that was and the doctor was like, "We're surprised that you ain't more blind, dude. You have so much scar tissue in your eye. Do you have a lot of head trauma?" That was the first thing the doctor said to me. I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, makes sense." So,
Yeah, I'm a boxer. Not
right, right,
punching
right.
bag, maybe.
Yeah. And so like I was going over to that side of town, and it got to where I was going to meet my oldest daughter's grandparents for the first time. And I'm going to tell this story, and this is for my daughter Jenny. This is always something we laugh about. So the story is called El Pistolero. El Pistolero in English is the gunslinger. And so I went to that neighborhood, deep rooted rivalry and hatred. I went there to meet my daughter's grandparents at the time, and I took a pistol with me. 14. No, was I 14? I was maybe almost 15. I was young. And I took, yeah, because I would have been a freshman. So yeah, so I took a pistol with me to go visit, to go meet these parents. And we and I talked my homie, who's also my daughter's godfather, my compadre. We ran together in the set stuff too, man. And so I convinced him to take me. I was like, bro, will you give me a ride? And he was like, are you stupid? I'm like, let's just do it. And I let him know. I was like, I'm carrying. We'll be all right. If something pops out. And I went at night, really dark out, and it was pretty late, probably closer to 10 p.m. And I said earlier, I always had more luck moving around during the day than I did at night. Well, today that day I didn't believe that, or something stupid, so I go to meet, my daughter's grandparents, and we're sitting in the car. We're sitting in the car, and you know, I start seeing things like, oh man, there's like a couple people that are they didn't know the car, they knew there were people in it, and they're like, man, like who is that? So then people started coming around, started like walking by, and then it seemed like, pretty quick there was eyes on the car from all around us. We were parked in front of the house. And then so catty corner to us, there was a few dudes. There was a dude that was sitting right there, and they're whistling and telling each other like, "Hey, we need to sweat this
Because you're just
car."
hanging out there instead of
Hanging
just
out
going
there.
in.
I didn't get out of the car because I was asked not to. I was like, "Don't." They're like, "Don't get out of the car." I'm like, I won't. And so I had the window, and I was talking to the parents and stuff, and then people start coming around, and the cops pull up behind us, and the cops even were like, this car shouldn't be here, man. Like, so the cops stopped us and, shook us down, and right away they knew who I was. It is, ran my record, ran my name. Um, and they were like, you down here looking for trouble. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm just visiting, I'm going to get out of here. I'll leave now if you want me to. They're like, nah, what are you doing down here? And so then they shake me down, and I had a 380 on me, man. And so, yeah, I caught my first gun charge, man, barely 15. And in my opinion, the cops that day, KB, they saved my life, man. You know what I mean? Like I think that things were getting ready to pop off, and we weren't trying to draw too much attention to us when that happened. And it was like, it's too late now. We can't leave. Like we can't go anywhere. That's going to draw more attention, more violence, and maybe some other people get hurt in the process. So I was ready just to kind of take whatever came. I was like, well, we're sitting ducks. It is what it is, man. We're going to stay here and take this, whatever comes. But so, yeah, man, I catch my first gun charge. And then,
So did you even meet the
I
grandparents?
did. Yeah, I met him. Yep. And that's
Like,
my
did that
daughter.
even happen as you're
Yeah, no, it
as
did.
you're
It did.
waiting?
It did. So the pistolero, that's what my daughter's grandfather, rest in peace, man. He died. He was a pretty energetic and incredible guy, man. He was like this massive troll. Like, it was insane how funny and how trolling he was. But he was the one that started calling me El Pistolero. And fun fact, I never told my daughter that story, and I didn't really plan on telling her, but she knew it. So because it's like legend down in that neighborhood, because there is something that I got for the rest of that story too. So, so I get arrested. I get uh, taken downtown, and I'm in the holding cell. And a lot of cops know that they know it's not a good idea to put you in a holding cell with somebody, because the gang units and all that stuff, man, all that data that they have. Cops know more about gangsters than gangsters know about themselves in those settings. You know what I'm saying? They know. So I was surprised that when I got to the holding cell, there was two dudes in there from a rival set, and they jumped me inside the holding cell. And so, they moved me and all that stuff, man. And then, so because I'm from Long Beach, the where they take you after you're like get processed in the holding in this police station, they take you to a juvenile hall called Los Padrinos in Downey, California. And so, I'd been in, already a couple times. I was on probation. I'd already caught a few cases and stuff, man. But I go to Los Padrinos, and how it works is you go in there, man, and there's like this. So it's all these cottages and all these spaces where they put everybody. It's two like spaces to a pod. So unit A, B, C, D, E, F, all stuff. Well, A, B is receiving, and like I said, I'd been in before, so this wasn't new, but I wanted to use this to kind of explain how rowdy that place is. So when you get in, you're sitting in this like fishbowl between two sides of this cottage, this giant cell with, probably I think it's probably like 60 people, 30 and 30, something like that. There was a lot of people in there. And then you're sitting there, man, and everybody's like staring at you like through the glass. You're sitting there with your blanket and your state issued soap and your stupid sandals. You're sitting there, you're a sitting duck, but not like nothing can touch you at this juncture. You're just sitting there like waiting to get processed for them to
But
put you
everybody gets
in.
to kind of like just
Yeah.
stare
So
at the guy and
everybody just
see what's
comes in and
going
they,
on.
yep, yep. They know who you are before you get in there because you get asked 50 times, where you from? Where you from? I told him, have him tell you, like, so it's, but yeah, you're just, you're kind of in that. And then, so then to, I go there, um, to Los Padrinos, and I'm there, kind of waiting to go to court and all this, because you get your like you got your arraignment and all this stuff. You go through the court proceedings and stuff to either get sent up to the camp or you get out. Um, and so I'm there, and I remember, man, that night I was in it. I just got lucky. So the dude that I was sharing a pod with, he had just got moved to his permanent home in that same place. So like I said, AB is receiving. They just really decide where they go to send you based a lot of times on severity of crime, what hood you're from. Like, these guys don't do so good when there's a bunch of these guys there. Let's not do that. So it's this insane workflow. And honestly, man, like they're pretty fucking flawless with it. You know what I mean? Like that, those units and those the cops and
It's like
the
managing that
CDC.
chaos, because if they don't
100%,
manage
man.
it, it's going to be just
Yep,
all
yep.
over the place.
Right. That CDC, yeah, that program, the Department of Corrections and all that, and like they know. Like they got us clocked, man. They know what's up. So, anyways, so that night I was sleeping, and they brought this dude in, and he I was asleep, and then he like somehow or another he snuck his gym shorts from high school underneath his LP attire. It's weird. That's just interesting. Like, why do you have that? Like, because normally they take everything from you and they put you in their attire, and that's it. Well, I noticed that he had Pauley High School gym shorts on, and I was like, hey, and like, so think about it like this, and this is another like kind of maybe offshoot of fear. KB, if I don't address that, because put in perspective, all my set, we couldn't go to Poly High School. That's where all our enemies and stuff were, man. So that wouldn't, so like when I saw Poly High and I knew that he was clicked up and he had a bunch of tattoos, I was I sniffed him out in a second. And so that fear though goes this other way, KB, where it's like, if I don't say nothing, then this dude gets out and goes, I was in Los Padrinos with this homeboy. He didn't even sweat me, and he had every chance to do it, and he didn't do it. And then, so we didn't have the internet and all this like way to throw shade, but I can guarantee you somebody everybody, oh no, don't get me wrong, there's a ton of misinformation and a ton of beef, probably a ton of death, a ton of unnecessary violence that happens as a result of misinformation. But I've seen a lot of good information flow through too, and I'm like, damn, how did you know that? How did you find that? That's crazy. That happened in this case. It happened in Los Padrinos, and I in this case it would have been a thing where it happened in Los Padrinos at 2 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's ever me and this dude. So I see his Pauly shorts, and I'm like, hey, homie, where you from? And he tells me where he's from. Rival to my set. And I'm not kidding you. Things started getting a little escalated. a hack comes in, a staff comes in and says, "Whoa, I didn't even realize you shouldn't be in here, man." And he like took the dude out of there and put some other
Oh
cat in there
wow.
from Inglewood in there with me, man. So like that's kind
Because
of a thing right
you
there.
knew it was about to go down,
He knew,
right?
yeah. And
Because
so
you could see the tension. Ryan was like,
see it.
"Why are they getting
Yep,
all tense?" And
yep,
they
yep, yep.
realized, "Oh,
Here's the thing: at the angle that where he sat, he was looking straight down a hallway. He couldn't see inside the pod at all. He just looked at his paperwork and said, because he told me that. He's like, "Yo, the cat that put us in there was a dude named Schultz." And he was like, "Ooh, Schultz's ass is in trouble for this," because he like that's like a huge no-no and a huge liability, allegedly, because it's like don't put enemies together. And of course, yeah, don't do that. But they're not gonna, I don't assume they're gonna get in trouble for stuff like that. But then it was just like, damn, that's on me. If somebody gets hurt, that I could have avoided that, you know.
right." Because from
So
their point of view, the way like I think you said in the last pod, right? The
yep,
we call street politics,
yep,
right?
yep,
Is that it's almost mechanic. It's almost like a clock. Like
yep,
it's a
yep,
mechanical thing.
yep,
Like
100%.
this plus this will always equal that every single time.
And KB, outside of this, everything is mathematical. But yes, 100%. This plus this equals this. And they knew that. So, anyways, so I go to court, all that stuff. Um, I had a couple of other cases pending on me at the time. And so they said, we're just going to hit you with everything, but we're going to have you come back for it. And so, um, I'm there for a few weeks and then I go home. Um, and right around that same time, um, we hear about this ceasefire, this peace treaty. And like I said, uh we don't have methods of like widespread information like the internet or any of that. Like we didn't have that at the time. But there's a bunch of people that are shot callers in all of these neighborhoods, and they're like, "Hey, listen, man, this is where this comes from, and this is what it is." And so um that's wild, whoa, what? And so we're at a place at a burger spot that we used to kick it at. And I remember one night a car pulling up and it was full of dudes from my neighborhood and dudes from the neighborhood where I just picked up the gun charge together in the car. And I was like, like, holy shit, that's crazy. And so, it was real. It was like, yo, this is real. This is crazy. This is nuts.
So what
And
is
so,
that? So when you saw that, just because because we're talking
yeah,
like the theme of today is really talking about fear,
fear.
right?
Yep, fear. Yep,
And under the normal circumstances, car rolls up, you're immediately sensing fear, right?
yep,
Because you don't know
yep,
what's going to happen. And then you
yep,
see
yep,
the
yep,
rivals get out, you're like, okay, I guess this might get on again. But then
yep,
you see your homies get out at the same time, and it's like how how
yep.
real now is everything that you're doing?
It was surreal. Like, like we're looking at it and we're like dapping each other up, like, "Oh, this is crazy." And we're all stoked on it. And I was like, you know what? Let's do this. And I don't know what anybody said. There's people that I run with in these sets that are going to watch this podcast. I'm still saying that I was the first one to walk those streets on that other side by myself. I'm the first one. So I remember the bus line. There's two bus lines, 191 and 192. I rode the 192, got off. So there was a market at the time in that neighborhood where everybody kicked it. It was right off the bus stop. It was called Anchor Market. There was like 15 dudes out there, man. I got off the bus and where you from? Where you from? Where you from? A couple of them knew me because of the gun thing, because I got picked up for that charge. Because they got good eyes on me after the cops pulled me out the car and handcuffed me and all that. So they're like, okay, we know who this guy is now. And so a couple of them didn't know who I was. There were a lot of fools there were like, yeah, man, what's up? Like, oh yeah, you're you're el pistolero. Like it's that legendary. That shit is that out there. You're el pistolero. And because my daughter's grandfather, he knew all those gangsters and shit too. He knew all those dudes. And so I'm out here, man, in a place that mere days ago, KB, they kill me. They kill me in that parking lot. And now we're dapping each other up and it's all love and it's all like, you know. And so, um, that made our neighborhoods stronger. We were the two biggest cliques in the city at the time, so it made us really strong, like unbelievably strong. And then that opened itself up to a bunch of opportunities for, when I say business, we're not fucking building kiosks or pop-ups. There's bad business, dark side of business stuff, but it opens up a bunch of opportunities for that. And then so I lived on that side of town after my daughter was born for about a year and a half. About a year and a half, I lived on that side of town. And so, after my daughter was born, I was trying to like get my act together. I was going to school, and I was going to a continuation school. I went to two continuation schools. I went to one in South Whittier, off of Imperial and Shoemaker. It was called Shoemaker CDC. CDC stands for California Department of Corrections. It was a continuation school for post probation, post lockup dudes. And then I went to another school, same thing. It was in Watts, and it was on Firestone and Great. Well, I don't belong in Watts or in South Whittier, but um, I was on probation, and they thought it was better if I went to school out of town. And so, and that was a part of my requirement to stay out of the clink, was to go to school. And so, and it wasn't really school. It was just a place we went every day, and they sat on us, and none of us wanted to be there. We were all there because we had to be and stuff. And so I did that for a little while. Um, and then it slowed down for a minute when my daughter was pretty small. And then her mom and I, we just kids and split up. So that opened up me. I got back into the set and kind of started running with my homies again. And it was really weird because like everybody kind of gave me my space, because at that point, KB, I'd put in like a lot of dirt, and like I was known for like being like, he's not coming around because he's afraid. He's coming around because he wants to be a dad, I was, like I said, I was 15. So I was born. My daughter was born September 1994. I turned 16 December 1994. So
Wow.
yeah. So, I got a pass, man. I got a pass. I had a ton of love and all that stuff. And nobody was sweating me about not coming around for a minute. I was like, oh, you got a baby. And then of course my daughter grew up around nothing but gangsters. Her uncles both clicked up, like all my homies that knew her, like my compadre, like her godfather, all these dudes are from the hood or from the street. My daughter, she's like, obviously, man, like my first love. She's like my twin energy. We're so much alike. It's I love it so much. But she she's so amazing and such a lady now. It's hard to believe that she grew up around nothing but gangsters. She grew up around nothing but gangsters. That's all she grew up around. And so, I started running around the set, getting in trouble, and then I definitely would say that I felt like I had run my course
Hmm.
as an active gangbanger.
Well, and that's going from 13 to 16, but that's like dog years
Dog years, no,
in
for sure.
those years, right? I
And I
mean,
had
I mean,
10.
everything
Oh
you
yeah.
go through in that period of time, it's all escalated. I was have to say, like being in the military is a similar effect, right? Oh, you only spent 3 years here, but yeah, it's military 3 years, so that's
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
different time,
It's a good way to
right?
put it.
That's not
It's a
like
good way
nine
to
to
put it.
five and I go home and
No,
Netflix. That's not that's not
no,
what
no,
that's not what the life is, right?
no,
And
no,
and so
no.
it end up burning through very quickly, right? In a
For
very
sure.
short period of time.
For sure. Yeah. And then I had a lifetime of experiences and stuff in those years. And then so, but I still wasn't done at 16. So, anyways, I start running around in the set again, and me and my older homie, man, he knows who he is. He'll listen to this. I don't want to say his name, but like him and I were roommates. 319 Elm Street, man, in Long Beach. We lived right behind the post office there, and we lived in a little studio apartment, man, just me and him. And we were still both active. both running the hood, running the streets and stuff, man. Um, and that getting back into that, was it. I would say when I said I felt like my time had come, I was like, I was away from this for a minute. Like my daughter was probably, maybe she was close to a year old, maybe, man. So when all that happened, when I split up and all that stuff with her mom. And so I had like a pretty quiet year there, very, really, really minimal contact in the set and stuff. Now I lived in the neighborhood and I saw people all the time, but it like I remember one instance in particular. My daughter's uncle, I had convinced him to go to school. He had got out on probation, and I was like, he was at Camp Kilpatrick up in the valley up in California. Camp Kilpatrick, believe it or not, you guys, if anybody's seen the movie Gridiron Gang with The Rock, that's the camp that a lot of us went to, man. Like we all, this sports camp stuff, man. So Camp Miller, who was right next to it, and maybe Camp Miller was a sport. One of them, seen them both. And then so he got out, and I was like, "Yo, you should go to school with me, man. It's quiet. It's far. It takes us like fucking 2 hours to get there in the morning, but you should go." And he was motivated at the time because he had just got out, So we started going to school together. And then one morning we were walking, and there's dudes out at all hours of the day. We're walking out to the bus stop before 6 a.m. And um, homeboy's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" I said, "I'm going to school." And he's like, "Man, school?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, get your ass to school." Like, just talking a little crazy. And I was like, "You should go to school, dog." And he was like, "Man, you guys are lucky that you get a pass to go to school, man. Like, I'm gonna let, so and so know." And it was like, man, but like that, it was looked down on that we were trying to do something with our lives and stuff, is what it really was. And so, anyways, I was going to school out there. That got crazy because a bunch of enemies and stuff started going there. And so, I ended up like dropping out of that school, man. And I was getting towards the end of probation, and I just kind of timed it where I was like, well, I ain't gonna go here no more. If I'm not gonna be on probation, I don't need to go here. And so I kind of timed it where like once probation lapsed, I was like, I'm not doing this no more. And then so that left
Well,
kind of some time to
that also because it started getting dangerous again.
dangerous, but I didn't let that part bother me. I more so was like I kind of was trying to make sense of it to myself, KB, where I'm like, I'm coming here because I have to, while also putting myself in danger. And I'll tell you exactly what the moment that it got crazy. So we used to wait for the bus here on like right. So we were on Shoemaker. The bus stop was right off the corner of Shoemaker and Imperial. Well, we're in a really active neighborhood in South Whittier. None of us are from Whittier. Nobody that went to that school was from South Whittier. Like it was kind of hidden. It didn't have any literature on it. You didn't know it was a school. It was kind of by design, that way to kind of keep us safe. Well, we were on the bus stop one day, and it's actually one of the most melting pot stories I've ever